Hey guys, what's up? It's Fern. Thank you so much for joining me for another Planty video. I hope that you are all doing so well. Thank you for joining me for another October special. Today we're going to be talking about, well, my loose concept was just weird plants, and I kind of just went wild researching and finding plants that were unique in one way or another. So there's no one criteria that these plants all had to meet to make my list. Some of them are very toxic, some of them just look weird, some of them have really unique properties. It's just kind of a compilation of 9 plants that really piqued my interest. I enjoyed researching for this video so much, and I found that I really have an interest in toxic and poisonous plants, so that might be something that I talk about more in the future. But I just absolutely loved learning about them, and I just think it's such a fascinating topic. I hope that you guys enjoy this video. It's more of an educational / informative format, so it's a little bit different than the usual. Definitely leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. If you are new to my channel, I would love to have you here. Make sure you click on that subscribe button down below so that you're notified of my new videos. Okay, let's just hop into some strange plants. I should also make a quick disclaimer that I am not a botanist or professional in any way. This is just things that I found through my own research on the internet, so yeah, take everything with a grain of salt. So the first plant that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is called Dendrocnide moroides, also known as the Australian stinger or gympie plant. Gympie seemed to be the most common or researchable name that I kept seeing online. As Australian stinger suggests, this plant is found in Australia, and it doesn't really look like anything too crazy. Like, it just looks very normal, like a plant that you would expect to see outside. I will have a photo of it up on the screen, but it doesn't look ominous, but you definitely want to steer clear of this one because it is known to produce the most painful sting of all plants. So it's covered in a bunch of really fine little hairs that when you brush up against it get embedded in your skin like little tiny needles, and then they break off in your skin and release their toxins. The pain of being stung by this plant has been compared to hundreds of wasp stings, fire, and even acid on the skin. It sounds very horrible, and on top of that, people can also suffer from fever, nausea, and even hallucinations. People suffering from the sting of the Dendrocnide moroides have needed to be strapped to chairs and beds because they become so restless and scratch at their skin, and in some cases they will start scratching their skin right off. What is even worse about this sting is that it has been known to last from anywhere from weeks to years. There are some reports of people being stung by this plant up to 10 years ago that still experience pain from it. And the pain seems to often worsen with temperature change and also water. So sometimes it will seem like the pain has gone away, but then when they, for example, take a shower, the pain just comes shooting back. It just sounds awful. This plant has earned itself the unfortunate and ominous nickname of suicide plant. And this isn't because the poison itself causes death, but the pain from this plant can be so unbearable that there has been cases of people doing just that. One story that I came across several times was of a soldier in World War II who was doing his business outside, grabbed a handful of leaves to wipe, and yes, he grabbed this plant to wipe with, and was in such unbearable pain that it was said that he later shot himself. And this is another reason added to my list of why I do not want to visit Australia. Are you guys okay there? Okay, the next plant that I'm going to talk about is another poisonous one. This one is actually like physiologically very deadly, and it is called Aconitum napellus, also known as monk's hood or wolfsbane. It gets the name monk's hood because of the shape of the flowers. It's actually a very beautiful plant, a very beautiful flowering plant. It has these bright purple flowers that are in the shape of a hood or helmet, and that's how it got that nickname. These plants grow throughout Europe and Asia, and like I said, are very poisonous. When I was researching this one, I actually came across somewhere called the Poison Garden, which I believe is in England, and it looked so freaking cool. I will leave a link in the description box down below if you want to check it out. But it's basically a garden that's all poisonous plants, and I think they have like 100 different varieties, and yeah, it just seems like very badass, and they do tours and stuff. I'd love to visit there, but yeah, just a side note. Okay, so this plant made it to my list because of course, how poisonous and toxic it is. It also has a really interesting history. All parts of this plant are quite poisonous, and the toxins cause significant cardiogenic effects. Most commonly, it will slow down your heart rate. I believe that it also causes neurogenic effects as well, so it affects your brain. So it's been used a lot in ancient times to poison the tips of arrows for hunting and killing in different shapes and forms. It also has been used, unfortunately, to poison wolf populations, which is how it was said to get the nickname wolfsbane. It also has a lot of folklore history around it. It is said to have the capability to ward off werewolves. In Greek mythology, there's actually a lot of different things about this plant in Greek mythology, but one of them that I thought was really interesting is that it was said to come from the saliva of Cerberus, which is the three-headed dog that guards the gates to hell. This plant has also been mentioned as the poison used in historical works such as Hamlet. It was said to be the poison that Laertes dipped his sword into before he killed Hamlet. It's also been mentioned in more recent pop culture. A couple of examples are Harry Potter, when Snape asks what the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane is, and they're the same thing. It's also been mentioned in Game of Thrones. It's been mentioned in several things, honestly. It's a very popular poison. It's also been used a lot in traditional medicine, and a lot of people actually still use it today. Some things that people use it for are heart failure, rheumatoid arthritis, and nerve pain. It's also used in homeopathy for a number of things. There was like a whole list, but a big one is any type of like panic or anxiety. It sounds like they use it as something similar to like Ativan to combat an acute stressor, which is interesting. Of course, disclaimer, do not consume any of the plants that I am talking about today. Okay, next is a fun one, and you guys might be familiar with this one because some people actually grow these in their home, and it is the Taka chantreri plant, or the black bat flower. Now, I chose this plant solely because it just looks like a Halloween plant. It just looks very bizarre and very cool. So the flower looks like it resembles a bat wing, and then it also has these like crazy whisker looking things coming off of it. So these are native to southern China, India, and Southeast Asia. The flower can actually grow as large as 1 foot across, and like I said, yeah, you can actually grow these indoors. Some people grow these as houseplants. They are understory plants in the rainforest, so they don't do well with a lot of harsh light. You want like moderate indirect to bright indirect light and pretty high humidity. From what I could find online, the care sounded similar to a lot of the tropical plants that we already grow inside, but it sounds like they can be a little bit more finicky, and they can be kind of tricky to get to bloom. I would be interested in trying to grow this in my home one day, so let me know if you think I should try it. Also, let me know if any of you guys grow this plant or have grown this plant. I would love to hear about it and to see photos if you want to DM me on Instagram. It just looks like such a cool plant. I have no idea where I would obtain one. I did search online to see if I could find these for sale anywhere in Canada, and I couldn't really find much, so I don't know. But I definitely think that the concept of growing this inside your home is very cool. So yeah, if you do that, I would love to hear from you. Okay, next we have another toxic one, you guys, and it is Actea pachypoda, also known as the doll's eye or white baneberry plant. So not only does this plant just look absolutely creepy and bizarre, as soon as I saw a photo I was like, yes, this needs to go on the list. Not only that, but it is also highly toxic. So as you can see from the photo, the berries look like little eyeballs. It's very creepy and strange looking, and consumption of just a small handful of those berries is enough to kill a human. These actually grow here in Canada, not on the west coast where I live, but these grow in eastern Canada and also the eastern and midwestern United States. So this plant actually starts out blooming very beautifully. It has these white, dainty, pretty flowers, and then the flowers turn into these weird red thick spikes, and the eyeball berries grow on the end of those. The berries produce a cardiogenic toxin, so they will affect your heart quite quickly, and the toxin is not only produced in the berries, it's actually produced throughout the whole plant, so steer clear, my friends. This plant has actually, it's interesting like how many of these highly toxic and poisonous plants have been used throughout history and in traditional medicine. So this plant has been used medicinally for coughs, cold, headache, and even to ease the pain of childbirth. Okay, so this next one I found very interesting, and it kind of rekindled my love for this genus of plant, and it is Nepenthes ampullaria. So I was searching, I feel like when you think of like scary plants, you think of carnivorous plants. So I was searching for an interesting or like scary carnivorous plant to share with you guys, and I came across this guy, and although it's not scary, it's just really interesting because it's kind of adapted to survive a lot differently than other nepenthes or carnivorous plants. So this one isn't actually considered a carnivorous plant. It's actually considered a detrivore, which means it can consume any type of organic debris. So this plant lives mostly off of like dead leaves, leaf debris falling from the canopy above it. However, it does also eat insects, small animals, and even feces. Actually, feces seems to be quite a large part of its diet. Like I said, there was so much interesting information on this plant. It really just made me kind of want to get into nepenthes a little bit more. They're just so cool, and the one I have, which I know is an easy one, I only have one, but it's doing okay, so I'm thinking maybe I should get another type. So this plant has been called the vegetarian carnivorous plant, although it's not technically vegetarian because, like I said, it does still eat the insects and everything else. I guess it's kind of like flexitarian, but it does get nearly all of its nutrients from vegetation, which makes it obviously a lot different from other pitcher plants. So is it called anatomy when it's plants and not animals? I'm not sure, but the anatomy of this plant is unique because the little lid that is normally on top of the pitchers actually stays open so that the leaves can fall into it. It also lacks several characteristics that other nepenthes have to attract prey. So it doesn't have any nectar glands. It doesn't like secrete anything to attract, you know, insects and whatnot. It also doesn't have any lubrication along the like lip part so that creatures can easily slip in. It doesn't have that, and it also doesn't have, like, I guess most of them have a waxy coating on the inside of the pitchers so that its prey can't escape out. It doesn't have that. What's really cool about these is that some creatures actually live inside the pitchers. They have like a symbiotic relationship. So I guess a really common one is a type of frog that actually will live inside the pitcher and eat the leaf debris and then poop into it, and the pitcher will consume that. And they also, these frogs even like lay their babies in the pitchers, so there'll be like a whole bunch of tadpoles living in the pitchers. It's really cool. There's pictures and stuff that I'll put on the screen if I can find one. I'm sure it's much more scientifically complicated than that. I'm just giving you the simplified version. Their growth pattern is also different than most nepenthes. They grow in these big clusters that kind of carpet the forest floor. Oh, and these are found in the rainforests of Southeast Asia. Very interesting one. Okay, the next one I'm very excited about just because this one is just very interesting and I'm sure that you've heard about it. And it is Atropa belladonna. also known as deadly nightshade. So this plant is said to have the deadliest berries on earth. It only takes several of the dark purple berries that it grows to kill an adult. This plant grows, it kind of grows everywhere. It grows in Europe, Africa, Asia, and North America. There might be more places that it grows as well. That's just all I've written down. The entire plant is actually toxic. I think that the roots are the most toxic, and the leaves are also extremely toxic. I think something like eating one leaf can kill a human. And yes, as I said, the berries are also extremely toxic. So what's really interesting about this plant, yes, it's extremely toxic, but it has such a rich history behind it as well. So first of all, the plant's name, belladonna, actually stems from Renaissance times when Venetian women would make like an eye drop out of the berries of this plant, and they would put it into their eyes to dilate their pupils to get a more seductive look. I guess that was a very desirable look then. And yes, this did cause damage to the eyes. Apparently when you had put the eye drops in, your vision was a little bit distorted, and over time it could actually cause blindness. So the name belladonna means a beautiful woman or beautiful lady in Italian. So if this sounds familiar to my fellow friends out there who watch Bailey Sarian, she talked about belladonna in her episode about aqua tofana, which was a poison that abused wives would give their husbands to kill them. So Atropa belladonna was actually said to be an ingredient in aqua tofana. It's very interesting. You can look that up, or maybe I'll just link the Bailey Sarian episode down below for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about. But yes, I guess that's just another layer of history to this plant. It sounds like it was commonly used as a poison to kill different people throughout history. It was also known to be a popular component of witch's brew, and apparently, well, not apparently, it is known to cause a lot of different hallucinations. And one of the kind of like hallucinations that it causes is the sensation that you're flying. So this is kind of like thought to be linked to the witch's brew, like the witches were putting this in their brew so that they could fly or something. There's also several historical and pop culture references for this one as well. So Atropa belladonna is thought to be the poison that Romeo and Juliet drink. There is also a reference to it in the Hunger Games. So Peeta and Katniss eat the berries called nightlock. The berries in the Hunger Games are called nightlock, and that has been, it's not a real berry, but it is inspired from, the night part is inspired from deadly nightshade, so this one, belladonna, and then the lock part is inspired from hemlock, which is another very poisonous plant. And then there's also reference to deadly nightshade in Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. So yeah, this is a very popular one. And components of belladonna are actually used in modern medicine today, which is really cool. So when you go to the optometrist for an eye exam and they dilate your pupils, this is what they're using. There's also several medications that have stemmed from this. Atropine is one, which treats bradycardia or slow heart rate, and scopolamine is another, which is used to decrease bodily and stomach secretions. It's very interesting. It kind of reminds me of how foxglove is also used today as a heart medication, digoxin. I don't have foxglove on this list, but that is another really interesting poisonous plant. Okay, we're jumping back to another plant that can be and is commonly grown as a houseplant, and this one is Mammillaria elongata cristata. Yes. Also more simply and commonly known as the brain cactus. So of course, when I saw this one, I was like, yes, this needs to go on the list. I had seen this plant before, like I've seen it pop up on Instagram or whatnot. I've never had the opportunity to get my hands on one, like I've never seen them sold around where I am, but they are very cool. So this plant comes from just the Mammillaria elongata, which is also known as, I believe, the ladyfingers. So it's just like a straight up kind of cactus. But this one, it comes as a result of damage to the apical meristem, which is an area of cells that are responsible for the new growth essentially. So in the wild, this has been damaged by things like insects eating it, and when the damage happens, the new growth turns into this weird like squiggly crested formation. So like I said, in the wild, this has been caused by insect bites. Also, the cells can mutate and cause this, which I guess is pretty rare. But today, most of the time, these are artificially mutated to sell as these brain cactus. They can grow pretty wide, up to about a foot wide, but they don't get very tall, only about 6 inches tall. And apparently they can actually revert, so they can start growing straight again, and you kind of have to prune those parts off so that your plant doesn't completely revert to just like the ladyfingers plant. So I just thought that this one was really cool just because of the growth pattern, obviously. I wish I had one of these so I could put it in a head or a skull planter. I think that would just be so cool. I'm sure a lot of people do that. Let me know if you grow this one. I would love to hear about it. Also, I'm really curious to know like about the reverting thing. Does that commonly happen? Are you having to cut off like the straight bits? I also wonder how fast this plant grows. Yeah, let me know if you have one. Okay, so next I have a really interesting one, and it is the Titan arum, or the Amorphophallus titanum, commonly known as the corpse flower. So this plant is native to Sumatra, Indonesia, and it is very famous because, well, for a couple of reasons actually, but the main one is because of the rancid smell that the flower gives off. So this flower is said to literally smell like rotting flesh or rotting meat, and the reason that this flower smells so bad is because it is trying to attract bugs to pollinate it. I guess it attracts like the type of bugs that would normally lay their eggs on a corpse. The scent is said to be the strongest at night. So I guess these plants only bloom once every several years. From my research, I was seeing like once from every 3 to 10 years. The average seems to be that they bloom like about every 8 years, so they don't bloom often at all. And in the wild, these plants actually, there'll be like one growing and then the next one won't be, like they're very spaced out, so they're not close together. So obviously this is not great for their reproduction. So they like really have to attract the bugs for pollination when they do bloom. Oh, and they also, when they are blooming, they only bloom for 1 to 2 nights. So it's like, it's go time when that sucker's blooming, you know, like you need to get all the bugs in there. So it really needs to give off that rancid smell. So it's like the long, I'll have a photo up, but it's the long, like pointy bit, which is called the spadix, in the middle of the flower, which actually gives off the scent. And it's said that that part actually heats up too. Like it's very flesh-like and weird. Sometimes you can even see it giving off steam from the flower. So these plants are very rare in the wild, but they are kept in several botanical gardens, and it is like a big deal when these things are blooming. Like thousands of people come through to witness this plant in bloom. It's a big event, which is so cool. I would love to see one of these in bloom one day. So when they are blooming, the pollen is hand collected, and then they freeze it and they wait until a different one at another botanical garden is blooming, and then they can pollinate it. It also produces one of the largest flowers. I didn't write down how tall they get, but I know that they get really massive. I'll put it somewhere on the screen. This is just truly such a unique and strange plant. It seems to be a thing that some blooms just smell really bad, I guess for that reason, to attract bugs. Like I know the oh, what's it called? The Stapelia? No, is it a Stapelia? I'm not sure. Like the lifesaver cactus that I have, I think that bloom is said to also smell like rotting. It seems to be a thing. But yeah, this one is obviously just extremely impressive. And the last one that I have to talk about today is it's just unique, and it is called Monotropa uniflora, or it's also known as the ghost plant or the ghost pipe plant. And this one's interesting because, well, these can be found, it seems they can be found really anywhere. Like these grow in all parts of the world. Is that right, or did I make that up? I think that's right. Oh, okay. North America, Asia, and South America. Not all parts of the world, but a lot of the world. I'm making things up now. Okay, but this one is interesting because this can be found where I live. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I'll have to keep my eye out for it, you know? So this is a plant that has zero chlorophyll. It is completely white. It even looks translucent in some parts. They can get a pink tinge to them, but for the most part, they are just like a very stark white. And a lot of people think that they are a fungi or a mushroom, but they're not. They are a plant, which is so cool. And they have a flower that kind of, you'll usually see it like drooping, curled over. I think that's to protect it from the rain going into it, but they'll usually be drooped over, and then like right before they die and seed, the flower will point upright. But yeah, they have these beautiful, like really delicate, dainty looking white flowers. Apparently they are very delicate as they look, and they have like quite a waxy feel to the leaves. So these can be found on the damp forest floors from June to September, usually after heavy rain, and they're usually found around beech or pine trees, and that's because these are the trees that they live off of. So these plants are actually parasitic, and they kind of have like a three-way relationship. So they live next to these trees, which also have these fungus growing off of them. So the fungus gets nutrients from the trees, and then so the nutrient comes from the trees and goes to the fungus, and then the fungus gives that nutrient to the monotropa. So somehow this thing is just really got a chain going where it can suck nutrients from. It's very interesting, and it's very specific. Like, I think there was only a couple types of like fungus or mushrooms that these guys could link up with to get the nutrients from the trees. It's like a very specific setup it has going on, but it's very cool. When a lot of the times when people see these out in the forest, they just think it's a mushroom, but it's not. It's actually just an entirely white plant. And this one does again have a traditional usage. So these have been traditionally used to treat epilepsy and eye pain. I think they're used as like some sort of eye ointment. Very interesting, and I just thought it was a really cool and unique one, and definitely piqued my interest because they can be found where I live. So I'm like I said, I'm gonna keep my eye out for these next time I am walking around through the forest. Okay, you guys, so that brings me to the end of my list. If you made it to the end, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Also leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. How about, if you made it to the end, how about you leave me a ghost emoji? That would be awesome. Let me know if you like this type of video. Like I said, it was a ton of fun to research. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy learning about different types of plants as well, and specifically weird or poisonous plants. Okay, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!